The desperate decision. The planet of Visor had once been seen as the beacon of the Union's future, a new world to be tamed, a fresh start for generations to come. Located on the fringes of the galaxy, it was rich in resources, and the atmosphere was nearly perfect for human colonization. But that dream was quickly unraveling. The terraforming operation, initially heralded as the most advanced scientific endeavor in history, had gone horribly wrong. The once vibrant skies of Visor had turned a sickly shade of green, a byproduct of the malfunctioning atmospheric processors. The colony's atmospheric generators, designed to filter out harmful gases and regulate oxygen levels, were failing. Day by day, the air became more toxic, and the once pristine land was transforming into a toxic wasteland. With each passing hour, the threat of death loomed closer for the 500,000 colonists who called Visor home. Inside the colony's central command center, Commander Era Thorne watched the data streams flicker across the holographic display, her mind heavy with the weight of the situation. The room, bathed in cold blue light, hummed with the low sounds of technology that no longer seemed to offer any real answers. The colonists had done everything they could, tried every repair, every solution within their reach. But nothing had worked. The atmosphere was deteriorating at an alarming rate. If they didn't find a fix soon, the planet's air would become unbreathable, and the people would suffocate. The countdown to disaster was inevitable. "Commander, we've reached a critical point," said Captain Cryo Vex, a tall, broad-shouldered man who stood next to her. His eyes were tired, dark rings beneath them. "If we don't make a decision, we'll lose everything." Era didn't reply immediately. She simply stared at the holographic image of the planet, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the edge of the console. The situation was dire, and as much as she hated to admit it, she knew that the Union's greatest minds couldn't fix what had gone wrong. Not anymore. The answers they needed lay beyond their current understanding, and Era was beginning to realize that if they had any hope of saving the colony, they would need someone, outside of their own capabilities. "Is there anything else we can try?" she asked, her voice quiet but filled with exhaustion. Cryo exhaled, his breath heavy with defeat. "We've tried every conventional method, Commander. We've even looked into using the emergency backup modules, but they're damaged beyond repair. We're out of options." Era's gaze shifted to the far corner of the room, where a large cylindrical cryo chamber stood. It had been abandoned for years, an afterthought. The chamber housed the frozen remains of a human crew, long gone, their mission forgotten. But in this moment, it might hold the answer they desperately needed. "Captain," Era said suddenly, her voice steady but laced with hesitation, "what if we woke them up?" Cryo turned sharply to face her, his brow furrowing. "You mean the humans, the crew from the abandoned ship?" Era nodded grimly. "Yes, we know their ship crashed here. We know they were exploring this part of the galaxy, far from their home. They were a crew of explorers, highly trained individuals. They might have the knowledge we need to fix this. But they're from Earth," Cryo replied, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Earth's a myth to most of us now. How could we trust that these primitives, these humans, have any answers?" Era's eyes locked onto his. "Because they think differently. Humans are unpredictable, chaotic, yes. But that's exactly why they might have the answer we don't. They see solutions we can't. They think outside the box. If we wake them, maybe, just maybe, we'll find a way to save our people." There was a long pause as Cryo processed her words. His skepticism was palpable, but the truth was undeniable. Their options were limited, and the clock was ticking. If they didn't do something drastic, the entire colony would be lost. "Who are we waking up?" Cryo asked, his voice low. "What kind of people are they?" Era's mind wandered back to the data logs she had reviewed earlier. The human crew wasn't just any group of explorers. They were part of an Earth expedition that had been sent to chart a distant star system, A mission that had gone horribly wrong when their ship had experienced a catastrophic failure. Only a few of them had survived long enough to enter Cryo sleep, hoping that someone would come to their rescue. And now, 5 years later, they were frozen in time, waiting to be awoken. "We're waking up Wayne Simmons," Era said, her voice firm. He was the leader of the expedition. His ship, the Odyssey, crashed here after a catastrophic failure. They never completed their mission, but we studied their ship, their technology. The crew had engineers, scientists, and tactical specialists. If anyone has a chance of solving this crisis, it's them. Cryo looked at her, doubt still clouding his eyes. "And you think he's just going to fix everything?" Era didn't answer immediately. The reality of the decision was immense. The humans were chaotic, unpredictable, and often violent. But desperation made them a potential solution, and with the lives of 500,000 people at stake, she couldn't afford to be picky. "We don't have much of a choice, Cryo," Era said quietly. "If we don't wake them now, we may never have another chance." The decision was made. Without another word, Era approached the cryo chamber and input the sequence to awaken Wayne Simmons. The chamber hummed to life, the cold glass fogging up as the temperature slowly rose. Era could feel her heart pounding in her chest as the countdown began. She glanced over at Cryo, who stood silently, watching as the fate of their entire colony rested on the shoulders of a frozen human from a distant world. As the chamber hissed open, Era and Cryo stepped back. Inside, the frozen figure of Wayne Simmons slowly began to stir. His muscles, once stiff from the cryogenic freeze, twitched as his body slowly began to wake. The hum of the machinery seemed almost deafening in the tense silence of the room. They were about to gamble with the survival of Zora Prime, and there was no turning back now. The human's eyes fluttered open. His first breath came in a sharp, choking gasp, and for a moment, no one moved. Era swallowed hard, and then, in a calm voice, she spoke. "Welcome back, Wayne Simmons. You've been asleep for a long time. We need your help." And with that, the gamble began. The awakening. The low hum of the cryo chamber faded into silence as Wayne Simmons took his first breath in what felt like an eternity. His eyes fluttered open, blinking against the blinding light that flooded the room. His vision was blurry, everything spinning in strange, unfamiliar shapes. His body felt cold, unnaturally so, and a sharp, disorienting headache pulsed in his skull. A high-pitched whine echoed in his ears, and he instinctively reached up to rub his face, only to realize that his hands were restrained. The panic that gripped him was immediate, but it was quickly followed by confusion. Why was he restrained? Why did everything feel so wrong? The last thing he remembered was being on the Odyssey, the ship sent to explore this remote part of the galaxy. They had encountered a catastrophic failure. He remembered the explosions, the chaos, and then nothing. His breathing quickened as he fought against the restraints. Something was wrong, very wrong. He opened his mouth to shout, but his throat was dry, and his voice came out as a weak croak. In that moment of panic, the glass walls of the cryo chamber hissed open. A rush of cool, sterile air filled his lungs, but the feeling didn't bring comfort, just more confusion. "Easy," a voice called, smooth and steady, yet tinged with something he couldn't place. A figure stepped into his blurry line of sight, followed by another. Both were humanoid in shape, but they were anything but human. The first figure was tall, with dark, scaled skin that shimmered in the light. Its elongated face had sharp angles, and a set of glowing eyes locked onto Wayne's. It looked vaguely reptilian, its posture rigid and composed. The second figure was a human-like woman, though she had an ethereal, almost otherworldly quality to her. Pale skin and bright eyes that gleamed with an unsettling sense of hope and expectation. She stepped forward cautiously, her movements graceful and deliberate. Wayne blinked again, his vision clearing just enough to register the situation. He was not on the Odyssey. He was somewhere else, somewhere alien, His heart thudded in his chest, his mind racing through 1,000 possibilities, but none that made sense. This couldn't be real. His fingers went to the side of his head, trying to find any trace of his communicator, his helmet, anything that would explain how he had gotten here. There was nothing. "Where am I?" His voice cracked, barely more than a whisper. The reptilian figure stepped closer, lowering its voice to match the gravity of the situation. "You're on a planet called Visor, far from Earth. You've been in cryo sleep for years. Your crew, your ship, it was brought here after an incident. We've been studying your ship's remains." Wayne's mind struggled to make sense of the alien speech, but the words settled into his awareness, the truth sinking in like a heavy stone in his stomach. Cryosleep. Years? Earth? Lost. His crew. He couldn't remember much beyond the destruction of the Odyssey. The explosion. The alarms. They had thought the worst had happened. He thought he had died. "Your name is Wayne Simmons," the woman said gently. "You're part of an expedition that was sent out from Earth years ago. We've brought you here to help us." Wayne's eyes darted between the two aliens, trying to process everything at once. The word help echoed in his mind, a beacon in the chaos. Help. What could they possibly need from him? A simple explorer, a soldier in a dead mission. The thought seemed absurd, but before he could say anything, the woman spoke again. "We need your help to save this planet." The words hit him like a wave. Save the planet. His brain recoiled. He didn't even know where here was. His limbs still felt like they were moving through thick sludge as he struggled to sit upright. The world around him felt unfamiliar, alien. There was a vague sense of danger hanging in the air, an urgency in the alien woman's voice that pushed him to focus. "I don't understand," he muttered, his voice stronger now. "Who are you? What happened? Where's my crew?" The reptilian figure spoke again, its deep voice calm but unmistakably urgent. "We are the Visorians. We came across your ship 5 years ago. The ship had suffered catastrophic damage, but we managed to preserve your cryopods and brought them here, hoping to revive you when we were in need. The atmosphere on this planet is failing. Our terraforming efforts have broken down. If we don't fix it soon, the entire colony will die. Your crew was trained in scientific disciplines, and we believe your expertise could provide the answers we need." Wayne's mind reeled. The Visorians. He didn't know what to make of that. And then the thought hit him. The destruction of his crew. He glanced around at the strange faces in front of him, his heart sinking. He was alone. The thought of being the only survivor of a failed mission left a cold pit in his stomach. I don't know what you think I can do," Wayne said slowly. "I'm just one man. We were scientists, yes, but I'm not a miracle worker. You're telling me the entire planet is dying." The woman stepped forward, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of awe and pleading. "You may not know it, but your species, humans, are resilient. You have a way of thinking that we've never encountered before. When everything seems lost, you find a way forward. We believe you can help us." Wayne felt the weight of her words settle deep within him. There was something desperate in her voice, something raw and real. He could see it in her eyes. This wasn't just some abstract mission to her. She wasn't asking him out of some fleeting hope. She was asking because their lives depended on it. His mind briefly flashed back to the chaotic years on Earth, the political instability, the wars, the environmental collapse. But one thing always stood out in human history: survival. He swallowed, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. The cold from the cryo chamber still lingered in his bones, but the heat of the situation was starting to seep in. His body ached, his muscles stiff from too long in a cryopod, but the decision was made for him. This wasn't a choice. This was survival. There were people here, real, living beings, whose lives depended on him. "All right," Wayne said slowly, the weight of his words filling the room. "Tell me everything. I'm listening." The plan. The room was cold, but not in the way Wayne had expected. The frigid clinical air inside the cryo chamber had been replaced by a heavy sense of urgency, a pressing weight that seemed to hang over the entire facility. The aliens, the Viceorians, were standing around him, eyes fixed on him with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. They had revived him, this stranger from a forgotten world, and now they were waiting for him to do what they believed no one else could do: save them from the impending collapse of their planet. Wayne sat on a metal bench in the center of the sterile room, still adjusting to his surroundings. His muscles screamed in protest as he tried to stretch, but it was hard to ignore the gravity of the situation. His mind was still clouded by the shock of waking up in an alien world, in the midst of a planet teetering on the brink of disaster. His heart raced as he processed the dire words that had been spoken to him. A planet dying, a civilization in peril, and only him, one man alone, could save them. The woman, whose name he had learned was Zara, stepped forward first, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. Her eyes were wide with a mix of hope and exhaustion. She had told him that her people were desperate, that the terraforming process had failed, and the atmosphere of Visor was becoming increasingly toxic. The air, once breathable, was now full of harmful gases that no one had anticipated. With each passing hour, more of the colony's citizens succumbed to the poisoned air, and soon there would be no one left. The Visorians had tried everything, every piece of their advanced technology, every method they had available, but nothing had worked. They needed Wayne Simmons, the human they had brought back from the dead, to do what they could not. "I know this is overwhelming," Zara said gently, kneeling down in front of him. "But you're the only one who can help us. We've studied your species, your history, and it's clear that humans have an unparalleled ability to adapt, to find solutions where others cannot." Wayne shook his head, trying to clear the fog in his mind. "I don't understand. How can I, one man, fix this? You've got advanced technology. Why isn't it working?" Zora's face grew somber. "Because the problem is unlike anything we've encountered before. We've been unable to control the planetary atmosphere. The atmospheric generators were sabotage. Something went wrong during the process, and now the systems are malfunctioning. They're releasing too much carbon dioxide and other harmful gases. The air is becoming toxic, and we don't know how to reverse it." Wayne stood up, pushing past the lingering aches in his limbs. He needed to think clearly. His training, his skills as an engineer and scientist, they had to come back to him. Earth's technology had been primitive compared to the Visorians, but humans had a knack for surviving against impossible odds. His mind began to race, and as the pieces of the puzzle started to come together, an unsettling thought crossed his mind. "So, if your generators are malfunctioning, are you telling me that the planet's atmosphere is still salvageable, or is it too far gone?" Zara hesitated, clearly weighing her words. "It's not too far gone, but the damage is severe. We may be able to stabilize it if we can find the right solution." "But you're not sure," Wayne said, pressing her with the question. "You're asking me to gamble on something that might not work." The Visorian leader, Pixar, who had been standing silently in the background, stepped forward now. He was taller than Zara, his dark, scaled form imposing. His eyes, though reptilian, were intelligent, sharp with a focus that spoke of years of leadership. "It is not a gamble," Pixar said, his voice calm but firm. "We are out of options. We have tried everything we know, and still we cannot save our planet. You, human, are our last hope. We have analyzed the technology aboard your ship, the Odyssey, and we believe that some of your methods may hold the answer. But we need you to lead us through it." Wayne looked up at the two aliens standing before him, their faces full of expectation. He was still struggling to fully comprehend what they were asking him to do. The last thing he remembered was the catastrophe aboard the Odyssey, the fire and the chaos, and now here he was, on a distant planet, a survivor with no clear path forward. "I'm not a miracle worker," Wayne said, his voice growing firmer. "But I do know one thing. We're going to have to think outside the box if we're going to fix this. Your systems, they're too advanced. You've been thinking about this problem the same way for too long. We need a fresh perspective." Zara's eyes brightened, and she nodded eagerly. "Exactly. You have no idea how much we've already tried. But we were only focusing on fixing what was broken. Maybe we need to think about this in a different way." Wayne took a deep breath, his thoughts coalescing into something resembling a plan. He had worked on terraforming projects back on Earth, though they were nowhere near as advanced as the Viceroyans' technology. Still, the fundamental principles of atmospheric management were the same. He began pacing back and forth, rubbing his temples as he brainstormed. "What we need to do," Wayne muttered to himself, "is not just repair the generators. We need to get a full understanding of what's causing the atmosphere to degrade. I'm guessing you've been using your atmospheric processors to keep things stable, right?" Zara nodded. "Yes, that's correct. They were designed to regulate the air. But something went wrong in the process, and now we can't stop the imbalance." "Okay," Wayne continued, "if you can provide me with the schematics for your terraforming equipment, I can take a look at them. But I don't think the solution lies in the technology alone. You need a more holistic approach. There may be elements of your planet's natural environment that can help mitigate the atmospheric damage." Pixar furrowed his brow. "What do you mean by natural elements?" Wayne paused, considering the question. "Well, you've got advanced tech that can manipulate the atmosphere, but you've ignored the planet's own ecosystems. In Earth's early attempts at terraforming, the most successful projects involved the careful introduction of biological processes, plants, fungi, bacteria, stuff that naturally filters the air and regulates atmospheric gases. Maybe your tech can't fix this alone. Maybe we need to reintroduce some natural life into the system." Zara blinked, processing the idea. "You're suggesting we introduce a new ecosystem to help balance the atmosphere?" "Exactly," Wayne said, his confidence growing as he thought through the steps. "You've been relying solely on technology, but nature has been doing this for millions of years. We need to blend the two, use the power of your atmospheric technology, but also integrate Earth-based biological processes that can aid in rebalancing things. It'll be a delicate operation, but it might just work." Pixar and Zara exchanged a look. For the first time, Wayne could see a glimmer of hope in their eyes. But that hope was fragile, and he knew it. This plan was risky. It involved elements of unpredictability, and there was no guarantee it would work. But if it did, "If we can do this, it'll buy you time," Wayne said, his voice steady now. "Time to fix the deeper issues with your terraforming system. We might be able to stabilize the atmosphere long enough to save the colony." Pixar nodded slowly, the weight of the plan settling in. "We have no other option. We'll need to work together." Wayne smiled, a flicker of determination rising within him. "Then let's get to work."